I once stood in a beautiful kitchen and argued with myself over using one extra handful of cheese. Not because I didn't have it, not because I couldn't afford more, but because something in me still believed I didn't. It's strange, the things that stay with you. That evening is still very clear in my mind, not in a dramatic way, not like something big happened. It was quiet, almost forgettable if you weren't paying attention, but I was. I had just moved into my first proper apartment, not temporary, not shared, not managing, but mine, fully mine. The kind of place I used to save on Pinterest boards I never thought I'd actually live in. Wide counters, clean lines, soft lighting that made everything feel calm, even when your mind wasn't. I remember opening the fridge that evening, and it was full. Not "there's something to eat" full, but full in a way that felt unfamiliar. Different types of cheese, fresh vegetables I didn't have to plan 5 meals ahead for, meat that wasn't bought with calculation but with ease. I stood there longer than I needed to, just looking, because a part of me didn't know how to respond to that kind of fullness. I closed the fridge slowly, like I needed a second to adjust, and then I started cooking. Nothing fancy, just something simple, comforting, the kind of meal that feels like it's supposed to be easy, but it wasn't. I reached for the cheese, paused, and then used less than I wanted. I remember thinking very clearly, don't finish it too quickly. And the moment that thought crossed my mind, something shifted, because it didn't match my reality anymore. There was more in the fridge. There was money in my account. There was no reason to hold back. But my body didn't know that yet. And that's the part no one really prepares you for. We talk a lot about growth, about leveling up, about getting to a place where things are finally better, but we don't talk enough about what it feels like when your life changes, but your instincts don't. Because I didn't grow up in abundance, I grew up in awareness. Awareness of how long things needed to last, awareness of what you could and couldn't take, awareness of what too much looked like, even when too much was just enough. You learn how to stretch things, how to reduce portions without calling it that, how to leave a little behind just in case. And it becomes automatic, not something you think about, just something you do. So when my life changed, when I finally had more space, more money, more ease, I thought the transition would be natural. I thought I would just relax into it, but I didn't. Because survival doesn't switch off just because your environment changes. It lingers, quietly, subtly, in ways that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Like using less than you want. Like feeling slightly uncomfortable when things feel too easy. Like second-guessing yourself when you don't need to. And that night in my kitchen, it all became very obvious. I remember standing there, stirring the pot, and just noticing myself. Noticing how careful I was being. Not in a thoughtful way, but in a restrictive way. And I asked myself something I had never really asked before. Why am I acting like this is all I have when it's not? And I didn't have a good answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't responding to my present, I was reacting from my past. And that realization, it didn't feel empowering at first. It felt uncomfortable. Because it meant I had brought something with me that no longer served me. Something that had helped me before, but was now quietly limiting me. Wait, I haven't told you the most important part yet. The most important part wasn't the realization, it was what I did next. Because awareness is one thing, but choosing differently, that's where it gets real. I stood there for a moment, just holding the spoon, and then, very intentionally, I reached for more. Not dramatically, not to prove a point, but gently. I added what I actually wanted, not what felt safe, not what felt manageable, but what felt right. And it sounds so small, doesn't it? Just adding a little more. But in that moment, it felt bigger than that. It felt like I was correcting something, like I was telling my body, my mind, my habits, we don't live like that anymore. And I won't lie, it felt uncomfortable. There was a part of me that immediately wanted to pull back, to reduce it, to fix it, to go back to what felt familiar. But I didn't. And that was new for me, because for the first time, I wasn't just aware of the pattern, I was interrupting it. And that's when I understood something that has stayed with me ever since. Just because you have more doesn't mean you automatically know how to live like you do. Abundance is not just about what's available to you. It's about what you allow yourself to experience. And if you've spent years learning how to survive on less, you don't just wake up one day and feel comfortable with more. You have to learn it. You have to practice it. You have to slowly, gently teach yourself that it's safe. Safe to have more, safe to use more, safe to enjoy more. And that learning doesn't always happen in big, obvious ways. Sometimes it happens in moments like that. Quiet, ordinary, easy to overlook, but powerful if you pay attention. After that night, I started noticing it everywhere. The way I hesitated before buying something I clearly needed, the way I minimized my wants before I even gave them a chance, the way I felt slightly uneasy when things felt too good, too easy. It was like my mind was constantly preparing for a version of life that I wasn't living anymore. And I had to make a decision. Was I going to keep operating from a place I had already outgrown, or was I going to allow myself to catch up with my own life? And that process, it wasn't instant. It still isn't sometimes. But it started there, with awareness, with a pause, with one small decision. To stop holding back where I didn't need to stop shrinking my experience out of habit, to stop treating abundance like it was temporary. Because that's another thing I had to confront. I realized I wasn't just holding back, I was preparing to lose what I had, even when there was no sign of loss, even when everything was stable. And that kind of thinking, it keeps you from fully arriving anywhere. You're always halfway present, halfway relaxed, halfway enjoying. And I didn't want to live like that anymore. So I started choosing differently, slowly. Letting things be full without rushing to reduce them, letting myself enjoy something without calculating how long it needed to last, letting ease actually feel like ease. And over time, something softened, not just in my actions, but in me. That constant edge, that quiet tension, it started to fade, and in its place, there was something else. Space, room to breathe, room to experience, room to just be. And I think that's what abundance really is. Not excess, not luxury for the sake of it, but the ability to experience your life without constantly holding yourself back. To feel safe enough to take what you need, to trust that you don't have to keep preparing for lack when you're no longer in it. And if I'm being honest, I'm still learning that. In different ways, in different areas. But now I notice it. And when I notice it, I pause. Just like I did that night. And I ask myself, what am I holding back for? And most of the time, there's no reason. So I choose differently, again, and again, and again. And maybe that's the real shift. Not becoming a completely different person overnight, but gently updating the way you move through your life. Letting your present inform your choices, not your past. So I'm curious, have you ever caught yourself holding back in a life that no longer requires it? In something small, something quiet, something easy to miss? I'd really love to hear your experience. Share it in the comments. I read them, and I always appreciate how honest you are here. And if this felt like something you needed, then you'll feel at home in this space. Subscribe to GistOver Cooking, where we don't just cook, we talk about the things we're learning as we grow into ourselves. I'll see you in the next one.